Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Introduce the main speaker for tonight, Harvey G.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Harvey Glass, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Harvey!
I can't even see the goddamn clock. Oh, there it is. I want to thank Jerry, if I could see him, for asking me to come speak tonight. I like Jerry. Jerry and his wife are, I think, two of the best people in AA. It's really cool. His wife, Kathleen, probably the only person in this room that has seen me and my wife at our worst. She worked for me. Actually, she came to work one day and the DA had raided my office. It was all a misunderstanding, of course. I've got acid reflux. Everybody know what acid reflux is? It's an old man's disease, I think. I get older and I get this shit and it's driving me crazy. It's just nuts. One of the problems with staying sober for a while, that nobody told me when I was new, was that you get older. I didn't know that. When I was new, I wanted time. That's what everybody wants when they get here. We want time. We want to be profound. We want people to listen to our crap, you know. But nobody told me that I got to get older. I don't want to do my first year over again, but I wouldn't mind being like 15 years younger or something. It's a bore. Okay, I'll tell you. I just want you to know I'm a pure alcoholic. I only did cocaine once. For 18 years, but it was... I'll tell you what a typical day was like for me so you understand just what happened. I've always had this deep fear. And for me, the biggest fear was getting out of bed in the morning, because I knew as soon as I got out of bed, the day was going to hell. So I found cocaine in August of 1965. And $20 a gram in those days, guys. Peruvian flake, 1 gram filled 3 bottles. It was magic. And I'd stuff my nose with this stuff first thing in the morning, and as you can tell, my nose is kind of large, so a lot went up it, you know. And 2 houses, 4 cars, and a horse, actually. And that would get me downstairs to my morning cup of coffee, and with my morning cup of coffee, I found God's second greatest gift after Jack Daniels. And this was a little pill that was developed, and the term better living through chemistry came from this pill. It was called Val Release. And what Val Release did was it kept 5 milligrams of Valium in your body on a 24-hour time release basis. This was the sweetest thing ever invented by mankind, and I would take 8 or 9 of those with my morning cup of coffee. And then I'd take 4 Fiorinol with codeine number 4s for the headache I was anticipating. And then I'd drive to work, you know. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I never knew what was kicking in. And I worked on the Sunset Strip in those days. I was a business manager in the entertainment industry, and you know that expression that somebody's worst day of using is better than their best day of sobriety, or their worst day of sobriety is better than their best day of using. It's bullshit, you know. I mean, I had some wonderful days. I had 2 great decades, for that matter. I mean, it was wonderful. I had a great time. I had a lot of fun. At 11:30, about 185 steps up the street was my favorite watering hole, this little restaurant and bar on the Strip called the Cock and Bull. And I was in that place every day from 11:30 to 1:30, and then I'd go back to my office. And then I'd get back up there for my afternoon, you know, coffee break, and I'd be at the Cock and Bull from 3:30 to 5, then I'd go back to work, and then I'd get back up there again around 8 o'clock that night, and I'd stay for however long it took, never knowing what the definition of it was that night, but whatever it was. Because when I relaxed at 8 o'clock and started to drink, when I didn't need to take care of my clients and my employees and build a business and do all of that stuff, when I relaxed, I could never predict my behavior. Once I relaxed and started to drink, I never knew what was going to happen, and it was crazy. And I did that behavior for 13 years, and then for the last 5, I started to abuse alcohol and drugs, and I went crazy. And I went nuts, and the old fear returned, and it was just murder. It was terrible. And it was a strange time for me. It was a time of complete uncontrollable behavior. I never knew there were consequences to my actions, or I didn't care if there were consequences to my actions, you know. It's just the way it was. I just did whatever I wanted to do, and the hell with them. And I'll tell you what happened, what my bottom was. It was September of 1982. It was a Saturday morning. It was the morning of my daughter's bat mitzvah. Everybody know what a bat mitzvah is? Yeah. Saturday morning, and on the front page of the LA Times that day, there was my picture, and not a good one. And it was my picture, and it said entertainment business manager, Hollywood business manager, indicted on 185 counts of grand theft. I always thought they exaggerated that kind of stuff. And I had to go to this party with 400 of my ex-wife's nearest and dearest friends, you know, and try to function. And I walked into that room, and that was my bottom. I can actually close my eyes and see that room right now. Because what happened was I walked in there, and for the first time there were 400 people that looked at me like I was the biggest piece of crap that ever walked. And I saw disgust and revulsion in their eyes, and it was crushing, absolutely crushing. And but I didn't get sober, and the reason that I didn't get sober was that I never had a problem with alcohol and drugs. My problem were always people. If they just left me the hell alone, I'd be fine. Just leave me alone. And it wasn't until almost a year to the day later I was in temple on a holiday called Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day in the Jewish religion. It is the day we were there asking God to atone for our sins. And God knew that I needed to be there for about 3 months, you know, but it's a one-day gig. And we sang this prayer called the Aleinu, the Adoration, and I got very emotional over it. And I started to cry, and I turned to Patty and my 2 kids who were with us, and I said, "Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom." And I walked into the bathroom, and I pulled out this little emergency stash of cocaine I used to carry with me for the many emergencies that occurred during a day. And I was about to do a couple of toots, and I said, "Why am I doing this?" And I threw it out. I just threw it out. Now, I'm not a Chapter 3 type of alcoholic. I never knew what I was doing was wrong. I never knew what I was doing, that the drinking of Jack Daniels and all the drugs were what caused my problems. I had no idea. I just threw it out. And to this day, I still have no idea why I did that. That was September the 17th, 1983, and I've been sober from that day to this day. And I don't know why. I don't know why on September the 16th I was loaded, and on September the 17th I was sober. I have no idea. And I went and I sat down, and I didn't say anything to anybody, and because I didn't know what the significance of that moment was. I honestly didn't. And I stayed sober for the next few days, and it was like 3 days later, it was a Tuesday morning, and I woke up and I thought that I was going to absolutely explode out of my skin. And I'd never felt like this before. And I called this guy named Tom Kenny that I had known. He was head of the Employee Assistance Program for the Motion Picture Health, or the Pension Fund. And I called Tom, and Tom suggested I go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for some strange reason, I did. And I went to my first meeting that night. It was called the Whatever Meeting. It was at the old IATSE Union Hall on Sunset Boulevard, and I walked up the steps to this Union Hall and into this room, and it absolutely changed my life. There were 200, 250 people that were firmly rooted in the problem. I mean, it was a wonderful show. It was a wonderful show. They called it the whatever meeting because people were kicking whatever in the meeting. It was before all the programs were going on, and people were bouncing off of walls, and there were fights in every corner, and cops were called every couple of weeks to pull some poor fool out of there. It was magic. It was just magic, you know. It was so much anger and rage, which is what was going on inside of me, and I loved it. Now, I want to tell you how I was different literally from the day I got sober. Prior to getting sober, I used to carry with me in the car an Ingram 9mm machine pistol with a 47-shot clip. because they were out there, I never knew when they'd attack, you know, and I want you to know I only pulled it out one time. It was in the mid-70s. We had a gas strike going, gas problems going, gas shortage, and it was my turn to get the pump, and some schmuck cut me off at the pump, you know, he took my pump, and I reached under the seat and I pulled up baby, which is what I called him, you know, and I shoved the clip in and I jacked it up and I pointed it at him, and he did the only thing he could have done was he got out of there, quickly, you know. Because I don't know what I would have done, you know. Stealing gas at that point was a capital offense, and I'd been up for about 3 weeks driving around, and I needed gas. And so, well, I no longer carried that gun. I carried a little Beretta. First 4.5 months I came to meetings, I carried this Beretta in this little waist holster right here. I never pulled it out at a meeting, but I did. I reached for it a lot because you people scared the hell out of me, you know. It was amazing. I used to wear these nylon warm-up pants for my ever-expanding waistline because I put on 85 pounds my first year of sobriety. Well, instead of drinking and doing the drugs, I was doing a gallon of Dreyer's ice cream every 3 days, you know, without a spoon. What I would do is I'd soften it up and I just stick my face in it. You know, I love eating ice cream that way. And I just got bigger and bigger, you know. 4.5 months, after 4.5 months, I kept the gun in the car because I felt safe enough at these meetings to come and not worry about it. I never raised my hand as a newcomer, never. Didn't take a 30-day chip or a 60-day chip. I took a 90-day chip and a 9-month chip. That's all I took. When it came time for my first year, I said to my sponsor, I'm not going to take a cake. And you can't force me to take a cake. If you make me take a cake, I'm going to get loaded. And he looked at me and he said, I don't care. And I said, you don't care if I take a cake or you don't care if I get loaded? He said, both. I said, I don't care. The love and tolerance of people in this room. Well, they tolerated me a lot. I don't know if they loved me, but they tolerated me. This was a great guy. He got me really involved in service, you know, and involved in the programs. I asked him how many meetings I have to go to. He said, we go to meetings. He didn't tell me 90 meetings in 90 days. He said, we go to meetings. He said, what else do you have to do? Are you working? I said, no. He said, you go to meetings. And we went, you know, I went to 13 meetings a week for the first 17 months of my sobriety. It's just what I did. You know, it's what he had me doing, and I did it. I'm going to tell you one quick story about him because it's been raining, and this always gets me in the rain. There was a Tuesday night, and then we had, you know, one of our normal Southern California rainstorms. It was about 1/8 of an inch of rain. So I lived in Sherman Oaks, and the home group meeting, the whatever meeting, was at Sunset and Gardner. So I didn't want to drive in the rain. And the meeting was over about 10 o'clock, and about 11 o'clock at night, there's a banging on my front door. I'd been sober maybe 3 months. There's a bang on my front door, and I go open my front door, and there's my sponsor standing there, just soaked to the skin. Because he didn't have a car. He hadn't gotten his license back yet. And so he was riding a bicycle. And what he had done was, in the rain, he had ridden his bicycle from Sunset and Gardner to my house in Sherman Oaks. And I looked at him and I said, Bill, what are you doing here? He said, where were you tonight? I said, man, it was raining. And he said, you didn't get loaded in the rain? I said, what has that got to do with it? And he turned around, got on his bike, and rode off. And I stomped around that house till about 3 o'clock in the morning, madder than hell at him. How dare he come over to my house and insult me like that? And then I got it. Then I got it. And the next day, it was still raining. I called him up and asked him if he wanted to ride to the meeting. And I picked him up and we went to the meeting. He never said another word about it. When it rains now, I go to meetings. It's just what happens. Even if it's not a meeting night, I go to meetings. I like to go in the rain. Nancy said she didn't know if I'd make it over here in the rain. I said, what the hell? I'd come over if I needed a boat. It's raining, I go to a meeting. When I had 17 months of sobriety, I finally had to go to court to find out what they were going to do with me on this case that I had now been delaying for 2.5 years. I hadn't been fighting it because there was no question as to my guilt. I mean, I'm a thief, and I stole the money. So, but they didn't know what to do with me because they had conflicting probation reports, and the DA didn't know what to ask for, and my lawyer was too loaded to know what to ask for, and the judge knew what to do. He congratulated me on my obviously sincere attempt to rehabilitate myself, and then he banged the gavel down and sentenced me to 5 years in state penitentiary. And away I went. I mean, I was on crutches. I'd had my leg operated on, and my bad leg couldn't move, and I wasn't about to move my good leg, And this marshal came up behind me and literally lifted me up and carried me off and dropped me in this holding tank behind the court. And I'm sitting in there. Now, what I had heard the judge say was 5, 5, and 5. That's what he sentenced me to. And then he ran them concurrent, but I didn't hear the concurrent. So I thought I was doing 15, and I was like in shock. I was 40 years old. I was an highly educated, upper middle class, West LA Jewish accountant, for Christ's sakes. What did I know, and I'm sitting in this holding cell facing 15 years. Now, I just realized this, the interesting thing, in 8 days, it'll be 20 years from that date I was sentenced. Wow, can you believe that, honey? Whew. It seems like a lifetime ago, and sometimes it seems like it was last month, but anyway, they dropped me in this little holding cell, and I said the Serenity Prayer, and that didn't help. I was scared to death. I said the Serenity Prayer, and that didn't help. And I said the Aleinu, the prayer I said right before I got sober, and that didn't help. And then I thought to myself, if I ever hear somebody share at a meeting of AA that their worst day of sobriety was better than their best day of using, I was going to rip out their larynx. and the rage helped. It was amazing. I was so lame. I'm sitting in county jail waiting to catch the chain to the joint. Doesn't that sound cool? We're going to catch the chain to the joint. It's all foreign to me. I didn't know. I had to keep on correcting everybody. They kept on mispronouncing my name. My name is Harvey. They kept on referring to me as Homie, and I kept on saying, my name's not Homie, it's Harvey. What is this stuff? And we caught the chain of the... I'll tell you what happened. Actually, what happened was 3 months later, they brought me back down from the joint to this judge, back into his courtroom for what's called a sentence modification, and they knocked a year off my sentence, so I had a net of 4. And in California in those days, you basically did half-time. I did 22.5 months in state penitentiary and 5.5 months in a work furlough house. It's the reason I'm alive and sober today. There's no doubt in my mind. I needed consequences to my actions. Had there not been, I don't know that I would have stayed sober, and I probably wouldn't be alive. I needed a place to go to make the amends I would never be able to make. I needed a place to go to knock out my omnipotence and most of my arrogance. I needed a place to go where people could show me that I was capable and worthy of being loved. I used to get 20 to 25 letters a week from people in this program. Every week, people used to come down to visit me, Every few weeks, these 2 friends of mine would fill their car up full of newcomers and bring them down. They say, you guys think you got problems? Let's go visit Harv, They'd bring these poor fools down to visit me. Now, I truly believe all that could have been accomplished in a month, but I wasn't in control of that. Sitting in that holding cell, I wanted to tell you one other thing. Sitting in that holding cell, I finally took the second half of the first step. I finally believed that my life was unmanageable. Up to that point, I'd given it a lot of lip service, and I said it was, but I never believed it. I never truly believed it until I was sitting in that holding cell. And today, the way that I get along in society and become a productive member in society is that I go through life with a series of small surrenders on a daily basis. Everything is a surrender. I know that nobody gets up in the morning and gets in their car thinking, let's go find Harv and mess with him on the freeway, you know. I don't take it personal anymore. Anyway, we caught the chain to the joint. I'm in county jail for like 10 days, and we caught the chain to the joint, which is really cool, by the way, in case none of you guys have ever done that. It's really hot. You're not cool until you've caught the chain to the joint. That's the truth. It's basically what they do is they handcuff about 40 guys to a long chain, toss their butts on a bus, and drive them the hour to Chino, you know. Except they didn't do that with me, because they figured if they put me back with the rest of the guys on my crutches, they'd take away my crutches and beat the you-know-what out of me with them. So they put me in this little room on the bus, which I thought was very sweet of them, until I found out later it was the high-powered room. So for about 3 weeks, nobody messed with me. They thought I was some sort of Jewish serial killer or something, you know. They just left me alone. I'll tell you a couple of things that happened to me. The first night I got to the joint, it was really weird. They put us in this thing called Central, which is, if you've ever seen like the old movies, Sing Sing, you know, with the one-man cells, 4x8 one-man cells, which actually 2 months later I'd have given my eye teeth for, but 4x8 one-man cells, you know, a row of 50 of them, 6 tiers up, you know, there I am, you know, on the first tier of this thing, and sitting there, and this guard felt sorry for me, so she gave me some of the worst smelling and tasting smoking tobacco I've ever had in my life, you know, and I rolled a cigarette. I didn't have any rolling papers. All I had was a legal tablet, so I rolled a cigarette about that long, you know. I'm just smoking this thing, you know, paper going all over, and I'm smoking it, and it's like a joint without the seeds. Everything was popping, and it was just, you know, or with the seeds, I should say. And I mean, it was amazing. And this guy in the next cell that I'd talked to a little bit, all of a sudden I hear him yell out, "Victoria, Victoria!" And I'm thinking, what the hell is that all about, you know? Victoria, because it's a men's prison. And from about four tiers up, I hear, "Yeah, baby." Now, I met Victoria the next day. She was very cute. It was a very strange place. Very strange place. Anyway, they moved me over to this West Yard, which is a transit yard, and it's basically what it is. It's a small compound. They put 2,500 violent sociopaths into this one small area and see how they get along and then decide what joint to send them. So in the middle of these 2,500 violent sociopaths, they put this fat old Jew on crutches in there, you know, and they say, "Get along, boy," you know, and I did, and it was very weird. But I'll tell you one thing that happened, and then I'll get out of the joint. I'd been down I was on that yard about 3 or 4 weeks, and I was lying on my bunk one day, and I felt the bunk shake, and I looked up, and I knew that life as I had lived it was gone forever. Standing over me was this huge guy, huge, shirt off, buffed up, I mean, just huge. Everybody in the joint worked out with weight. Not me, but everybody else did, you know, and he was just huge, and he had lightning bolts tattooed all over his body, you know, and the 3-leaf clover over his left breast, which signifies the Aryan Brotherhood, and Oildale tattooed over his belly button. Oildale is this little city outside of Bakersfield. It's the only city in California that has its own Ku Klux Klan clubhouse, you know. And it's got SWP for Supreme White Power, you know, tattooed under his belly button. And he looks down at me, and I look up at him, and I think there's a little glint of love in his eye, you know. And he says to me, "Is your name Harvela?" Now, Harvela is what my mother called me. And if you've ever met a Jewish mother or the definition of a Jewish mother, you multiply it a thousandfold, and that was my mom, you know. And I looked at this guy and I said, "My name is Harv. Where did you get Harvela from?" And he said, "Well, your mother told my mother I'm supposed to talk to you." Now, what had happened was that this guy's mother and grandmother ran into my mom out in the visiting yard. And as was her wont, she talked to everybody. And she said, "What's your son in for?" And they said, "Drugs and alcohol." And she said, "Isn't that a coincidence? So is my Harvela. You know, but my Harvela's been clean and sober for a year and a half, and you ought to have your boy come talk to him." And that's what he was doing. He was coming to talk to me, which was pretty funny. Nice guy, you know. Good God-fearing people. He had some strange ideas, you know, as a lot of us do when we're loaded. He had some strange ideas. He was a strange dude, bad dude, but very strange. I'd like to tell you he stayed sober. I'll tell you an interesting thing. 3 years after I got out, I went back into the joint on for a banquet because my best friend, Big Jim, everybody's got a nickname. My best friend, Big Jim, who's now sober 15 years, I think, or 14 years, had to go back into, actually he went back in 3 times to prove to himself that he was in fact an alcoholic and a drug addict, you know, and an armed robber for that matter. And so one of the guys that I helped get sober, Triple B, Big Bad Bob. So Triple B and I are going in to see Big Jim, you know. So Homie and I are going in to see Homeboy, you know, whatever it was. Anyway, and there were like 40 guys who were waiting out in front of this banquet that I'd been down with that all heard I was coming back home. So they're all waiting to say hey to me, you know, because nobody says hi. It's all hey. They used to call me Had Money, you know. Hey, Had Money. And stay down with your bad self, whatever the hell that meant. I never figured that one out. And they told me that Randy had just, this guy, the AB guy, had just gotten out one more time, and he was going to do it with the church. Now, I told this story about 5 years ago, I guess it was, or 6 years ago, and somebody came up and asked me if I wanted to get hold of him. They were a private investigator, and I said I'd love to. And they got his phone number for me the next day, and he had just gotten out of the joint again. You know, and I called him and I talked to him and we talked on the phone, and he told me that he'd been out for 3 weeks and 2 weeks, I guess, and they told him if they bust him for anything, petty with a prior, under the influence, anything, they were going to 3-strike his butt and throw him away for 25 to life. And he was going to 2 NA meetings a day, and he had a sponsor, and he was reading the book and working the steps, and he was trying with all his heart, and he was going to stay sober. And he lasted a week, another week, and then he got popped, and then they threw him away for 25 to life. Now one of the reasons I stopped telling this story for a few years, was because I have a almost 32-year-old speed freak son who's got 2 strikes, and I'm scared to death that he's going to go away. And he's not going to get sober until he gets that 3rd strike, and it scares the hell out of me. You know, it just scares the hell out of me. Because I've seen guys that have done a lot of time, and I know that they've got some problems, and I know that they're insurmountable in some ways. Anyway, I got out of that penitentiary full of rage, because I was full of fear, and my fear always manifests itself into rage. And you know, it was the love of people in this program that used to listen to me bitch and moan and rage and scream. I mean, I was just nuts, you know. And people listened to me, and they paid attention to me, and they loved me, and they helped me out. And it took a long time, you know. When I was about 8.5 years sober, my sponsor that I had at the time suggested I start doing a 10-step, a diligent 10-step. And I started doing a diligent 10-step, and I did it for about 5 years, 4.5 years. Every day I would do writing, and then I would call him and I would read it to him. And you know, it took about 4 years at that point. I was about 12.5 years sober. We were having some problems with my son again, and I finally was convinced that if I truly believe in a power greater than myself, that I have to believe that my son has his own higher power, and I have to let his higher power take care of him. And I knew that I admitted to my innermost self that I knew that everything, no matter what happened, I was going to be okay, and I was going to be able to get through it. And the rage left. Just left. And that's been 9 years, and I haven't had a bout of rage in 9 years. I've been angry, but I haven't had a bout of rage. That rage is gone, you know, and it's only because of the steps and working with people in this program. Whenever I felt bad, I remember I used to call them up, and I used to say, I got a problem. And he'd say, how many newcomers have you talked to? And I'd say, what the hell's that got to do with my problem? He'd say, call me back after you've talked to 2 newcomers, and he'd hang up. And I had to, you know, I had to get ticked, pissed off at him, and, you know, but I had to talk to 2 newcomers. I remember one time I had about 8 years of sobriety. I was a terrible sponsor. I had about 8 years of sobriety, and finally the last guy that I sponsored fired me. And I called him on the phone, and I said, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I just can't take this. I hate these guys calling me and whining all the time, whining and whining. And he said, no shit, and hung up, you know. And it's the lessons that people have given me. Almost 15 years ago, we went to Seattle for the International Convention in 1990. It was the first one that we went to. We went to this convention, and we were sitting in this meeting, one of the smaller meetings where there were only about 1,000 people, and it was incredible. And there were 3 speakers, but the second speaker got up and changed my life. It was this woman named Bibi from New York, and she said that she believes that God gives 3 answers. Up until that point, I believed that God gave 2 answers. Yes and no was a viable answer. She said that she believed that God gave 3 answers. Yes, not now, and I have something better in store for you. Isn't that wonderful? Yes, not now, and I have something better in store for you. I believed it immediately. And I went back and I looked at all of my perceived no's, and they were really not nows, and a lot of them were where I've got something better in store for you. You know, I have the best life I've ever had. People say to me, I never complain about my life because I have an incredible life, absolutely incredible life. I work at home. This is not what I expected I would be doing at 60. I mean, I never planned to be 60, but this is not what I planned to be. Whatever my delusions of grandeur were, or my expectations, or my dreams, they never had to do with anything to do with happiness or peace of mind. They all had to do with money and power and that sort of thing. And today I work at home. It's real interesting. My wife retired 3.5 years ago, and she works at home too. We're both accountants, which is really funny. But so her office is on one side of the house, and my office is on the other side of the house. We meet in the kitchen for lunch, you know, and it's really cool. But you know, I got 2 dogs, which are my employees. You know, my traffic jam is them lying in the hallway on the way to my office. You know, it's an incredible life. We go to Maui 3 times a year. You know, we spend a lot of time in Maui. There's a convention over there the first weekend in June. If you guys aren't doing anything, you ought to come over to it. They had the first one last year. It was a great time. There were like 750 people there, you know, for their first convention. But we go over there all the time. We have a home group over there. We've been going to the same meeting over there for 21 years. We know a lot of people over there, and they're wonderful. I mean, it's just incredible, you know. What used to happen to me at meetings for about 3 months every year, there'd be a period where I hated meetings. I didn't stop going, but I hated them. All the people that shared were full of bull. The speakers were lousy. You know, I hated listening to Chapter 5. I hated the meeting. I didn't stop going, but I hated them. You know, and then 2.5, 3 months later, somebody would say something, and I'd start to laugh, and the spell would be broken, and I'd be fine. And that would happen almost every year, and it hasn't happened since Patty retired, because now we're going to more meetings together, which is cool. You know, and she's always like, calm me down. She has 4.5 months less than I do, which is always, galls her, you know, especially 2 meetings we go to. They do these sobriety, you know, count things, and every 5 years there's 5-year increments, and every 5 years, I hit 4.5 months before she did, you know. We've been together drunk and sober for 25 years, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I know. That's almost better than being sober for 21 years when you think about it, because I don't know a lot of that goes on. And the real thing is, the real miracle is, I've known her since I was 17. We worked together in this little 5 and dime when we were teenagers. I mean, it was really weird. she was 3 and I was 17. But anyway, the point I was getting at, I don't know what point I was getting at, but what's happened is that my life is at a point that there is absolutely nothing about it I would want to change, and I've never had that before. I've never had that before. That I get up in the morning, and I do a real simple thing. I say good morning to myself in the mirror. Stupid little thing that my first sponsor had me do, and I've been doing for over 21 years. And then I say, dear God, please make today as good as yesterday, because the only thing that screws up my days today is my perception of it, unless somebody dies or became seriously ill. But for the most part, it's my perception, and I can do that. And then I give them a list of people that I ask them to take care of, you know. And there are a couple of people in this room who are on that list, and which is kind of nice. There are a lot of people in this actually on that list that never would have been. I know today that there are people that love me, and there are a lot of people that love me. And the reason that I know that is because I love so many people. You know, that never happened before. That never happened before. I came into this program almost 21 and a half years ago alone. And I didn't know a soul, and nobody wanted to know me. And today it's entirely different because of that, because of AA. I will never be able to repay AA for what it's given me. I'll never be able to do that. But I'll try one day at a time for the rest of my life. Thanks for listening.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.